Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Ray Esports Racing League here on Apex Racing TV. My name is Ron Mons. Joining me in the virtual commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall, we have our old friend Josh Wilkie working all the cameras and the graphics and everything that you'll see throughout this broadcast. You join us here at the virtual Summit Point Raceway, or I guess it's Summit Point Motorsports Park, as it's called nowadays, but I always like to call it Summit Point Raceway. It just rolls off the tongue a little bit better, but we're here at the virtual version of this track where we expect to see some great racing over the next hour and a half. Now, many of the drivers that you'll see on track here tonight are the same ones that you see racing in SCCA events across the country. But even though these cars are just pixels on a screen, that doesn't stop the ladies and gentlemen from this series from turning up in droves and putting on great shows week after week. Speaking of week after week, we're already about halfway through this season. After the Formula race that we're in right now, it'll be the halfway mark of this first season here, actually the 11th season of the Ray Esports Racing League, the first here in the year of 2024. So I think now that we're about the halfway mark of this season, I think it might be a good time just to look at the point standings, because we definitely have a lot to break down in both of these classes. Right now we have the Formula cars on track, as you see them coming through turn one now, so we'll get the Formula results here right now. This is in the Formula Ford split of the Formula class here. We've got the Formula Vs and the Formula Fords running here, and this is the standings of the Formula Fords. It's Andrew Wozencroft right now, 47 points, only 2 ahead of Jameson Huffman there in P2, so a very tight fight here up towards the front, because Chris Montgomery isn't too far behind them in the top 3 in points, separated by only 5. So very tight pack here in the Formula Fords. That's Charles Ricciardo there in 4th, still within about 7 points of them. Then you can see in the Formula Vs now, it's Jacob Schilling, a little bit of a gap between himself and Bradford Gould here between P1 and P2 in the Formula V category. So about 12 points separating them. Then a little bit farther back to Josh Justice in P3 of the Formula V, still fairly close in that category as well. You can see tied between 3rd and 4th there. So very tight packs all throughout both of the Formula classes here. So very tight championship points right now, and I think we might touch on some of the other championship point standings later on throughout this broadcast when we hit the MX5 race here coming up in a few moments time. But for now, we're going to stick to the formulas here with 2 classes. As I said, the Formula Fords and the Formula Vs taking part in multi-class battling, where lap traffic is definitely going to be an issue in this upcoming 20-minute race. So to pass this off to my colleague here, Charles, what do you think is the best way that these drivers need to attack the lap traffic here in tonight's race?
I'll tell you what, Ron, it's not much more difficult than just patience. This is a very tight circuit, even with these small cars. There's a huge speed difference that I'm seeing out there. It's like an 11 second gap between the two classes. So we're going to come up on the lap traffic hot and heavy very quickly in this race. So you just got to be patient and take your time. There are places to pass. You'll get some nice straightaways where you can, where the Formula Fours can use that extra horsepower and motor on by. But you just have to be patient. You can't do it in the tight twisty bits. It's going to be too dangerous and too much room for error there. So I think patience is going to be the name of the game tonight when it comes to lap traffic.
I definitely agree with you there. I think all these drivers need just picked out in big, bold letters on their computer monitors right now. Patience, just in big letters so that they can see it regardless of where they're looking at on their computer screen, because patience is going to be so important at this track. Not a whole lot of runoff area to speak of. You can see that gravel trap, which with some recent physics updates here in the world of iRacing, the gravel traps really stop you quite hard if you even dare touch a wheel off them to that gravel trap there heading through that corner. So I figured I'd mention this at the start of the broadcast. We were kind of iffy on whether or not we would mention this, but I will note here at the top of the show, as we're riding on board with Tom Laurie, who I think will be taking a one-way trip to the barrier. I think actually he managed to stay out of the barrier. Good for him. So he keeps that Formula V of his clean. But anyways, getting back to the point that I was going to mention, a lot of the viewers watching us here tonight on Apex Racing TV are watching from the SCCA National Conference. So firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. Welcome all of you here, and hopefully you're really going to enjoy the racing action that we have here tonight. Secondly, the experience with the SCCA here in this race is not confined to the drivers just in the sim. I myself have been a member of the SCCA since 2014, April of 2014. To be a little bit more precise, I have spent the better part of a decade running autocross events out of the Philadelphia region. I've even gone out to solo nationals about 5 times. So the SCCA is a very well-valued home. It's been a well-valued home of mine for pretty much most of my life at this point. I've been racing with the SCCA ever since late 2013 when I showed up to my first ever event as an 8-year-old. So it's a great organization to be a part of. And many of the drivers that you see on track right now are a big part of the SCCA family as well, despite this being the quote-unquote unofficial SCCA Racing League. So as I've gone through that long menagerie, qualifying is underway as we hand out earlier, if I can spit my words out here. So Charles, could you give us a rundown of how qualifying is looking thus far?
Yeah, so far we've got Zachary Rivard, I think we won last week, setting the pole. He's got about a 3.5 gap over Megan Overstreet. And then we've got Jamison Huffman, Skip Brock Jr., and DJ Allison Drini rounding out your top 5. Down in the Formula Vs, we've got Andrew Love setting the pace so far with Tom Laurie, Trip Isley, Beans Forster, and Donnie Isley, I think, is a father-son combination there of SCCA racers in real life, and that is your top 5 in Formula V.
Yeah, very stacked field tonight. You can see a massive turnout here with these cars that are part of base content here in the world of iRacing. When we say base content, it's part of one of the cars that you get for free. You don't have to pay extra for it. It's one of the cars that you get whenever you sign up here on iRacing. So a lot of drivers turning up here tonight, and one of them is our old colleague Greg Ginsberg, currently in P6 in the Formula Vs. You can see him at a 126.9. If we can ride a little bit closer and follow his car, I think there's a small little note here on the back of Greg's car. So
absolutely.
Our producer Josh mentioned this. He didn't spoil it for me, so it'd be a little bit of a surprise. And there's a little bit of a backstory there. So you can see Morgan's faster, and that is a photo of Morgan Burkhardt, esteemed SCCA member, and just won the other fantastic Rookie of the Year honors nationally for the SCCA a few weeks ago at the prize-giving ceremony, as currently running in the other Michelin Pilot Series in IMSA. And you can see him in a 2009 top cart with a 80cc Comer engine. And I know that cart very well because it is my cart. I bought that from a gentleman that runs the rental car program at the Englishtown Raceway back when they had rental carts running there. We bought that from him, and me and my dad did, back in 2013, ran with the SCCA in the Philly region in 2013, 14, and 15. And then in late 2016, we got contacted by a family running out of the DC region asking us if we could bring the cart down to a autocross event at FedEx Field. I believe it was the last event of the DC region season season for Autocross that year. And that kid was Morgan, and he stepped in that cart, and they ended up buying that cart later that day. So, Greg, if you're listening in on this broadcast later on, thank you very much for that. And I think he also has another mention to that in the MX-5s that we'll be seeing here in the second half of this broadcast. But that is a very funny addition to the paint scheme. I'm not even mad. That is beautiful.
That is great. And I thought Greg talked for a living. I didn't expect him to actually be out on track. I just thought he talked about racing. Got to do a couple of races with him a few seasons ago, just some fill-in work for this for the Ray Esports unofficial series here on Tuesday nights. I will say this: I am obviously a huge racing fan, not just the digital side, but real life. I've been going to races for I don't know if I should admit, that I've been going to races for about 40 years. As just a fan, everything from NASCAR to Radical Cups. So I have looked, because I've been doing the race esports, the Weekend Warriors, for the past 3 seasons on Sundays, and then I picked this up for the Tuesday night series. I've already did my research, and the regional SCCA will be at Barber Motorsports Park, which is my home circuit, in late August. So I will be out there on Saturday at least, checking everything out, and hopefully maybe finding some of these some local drivers out there that I can meet and talk to, and just watch some fantastic racing. If it's anything like we get here on the digital side, it'll be worth the money just to go out there and watch the racing live in person.
I think all of us love racing, so regardless of what form it is, we're always excited. That's one of the reasons why I've just loved doing the broadcasting here on Apex. Only picked it up back last year. I think it was March 3rd when I did my first ever Apex broadcast. And whether it be here with the Ray Esports Racing League, whether it be some of the Weekend Warrior stuff that I've picked up in your absence, Charles, or whether it be some of the other awesome series that we have here on Apex Racing TV, it's just racing action from start to finish. And this series is probably the most exciting that I've covered in the other broadcasts that I've done with the series, whether it be last season, where I did a few along with Greg until I had a little bit of a personal issue. I thought I had a cavity. It turned out I needed a root canal, so I had to back out of those broadcasts and get that sorted. So I yielded my seat in the virtual commentary booth to Morgan Burkhardt. So a little bit of a fun fact for you there. But with this series, it's always been action-packed from start to finish. I think we're going to have another action-packed race here as well. Qualifying has wrapped up, and you can see Zach Rivard, who actually runs Formula 1600s or Formula Fords, whatever you like to call it, whatever nomenclature you like to choose. He is currently at the front there. You can see him driving down the pit lane right now. That is a very fast lap time from him at a 1:14.855. So pretty big gap between himself and Yanxi Lin, I believe that is in P2. So pretty large gap between these two, about 0.4 of a second, a little bit less than that. You can tell I was always great with math in school, but a fairly a little bit of a spread out field in the Formula Ford, something we come to expect from that series here. Actually, it's fairly close between Megan Overstreet and Alessandri, who we're following here, running in the number 2 car, coming through the very tight, twisty middle section of this circuit. I can't really speak, because I think both races are going to be very exciting, but the Formula Vs are always the main source of action, because these cars are always beautiful. As you can see, a beautiful drift there from Alessandri going through that corner there. So I'll ask you this real quick, Charles, as these drivers are wrapping up their qualifying session. What do you think is going to be the more exciting race? Is it going to be the Formula Fords, or is it going to be the Formula Vs?
Well, I tell you, this is the first time we've seen this. This is a very big field of Formula Vs, and there's like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of real life racers in there. Some of them have been there, week in and week out, and some newcomers. So I think it's going to be a very interesting race in Formula Vs. Obviously, once we get into traffic management, that might trip a few of the newcomers up a bit, but I think we're in for a good show in either class. But yeah, I think Formula Vs is really going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Formula Vs are always, throughout the Formula races that we've had so far this season, those races have always been the best, and I think this race will be no different here tonight. So I think the qualifying session has wrapped up, and we're going to get the starting grid here in a few moments' time. And I think while I pull up a quick little track map of this track, I think I'll pass off the honors of going through the starting grid to you, Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with the Formula Fords. They'll be out front, and we got Zachary Rivard on pole. Next to him is Yangqi Lin. Row 2, we've got Megan Overstreet and DJ Alessandrini. Row 3, Jamison Huffman and Skip Brock Jr. You'll see those guys really trying to fight to go to the front. Raymond Blethyn, Jim Brewster on row 4. Stephen Blethyn and Wayne Buttermore, row 5. John Wilson, Andrew Wozencroft on row 6. And then shotgunning the Formula Ford field will be Russ Lundberg.
Russ Lundberg making his return to the series. We haven't seen him so far this season, so hopefully he has a good race there. As that's moving on to the Formula Vs. Tom Laurie is grabbing the pole position there. Joining him on the front row is Andrew Love with Isley there in P3, Beans Forrester in P4, Donnie Isley there. You can see the Isleys starting in P3 and P5 there. So Isley joining Michelle Lynn there on the third row. That's Shaq Murchison in P7. Greg Ginsberg there in P8, running my old race car there on the back of it. That's Stevie Ray, the series admin there, starting this race in P9 with Andrew Abbott there rounding at the top 10 in the Formula Vs. And if we can just scroll here a little bit, thank you very much, Josh. We got Jacob Schilling there in P11, Josh Justice in P12, Brad Gold in P13, Brennan Abbott in P14, Seth Spallman, Joaquin Effinger there between P15 and P16, Mark Sherman in P17, Murphy Nichols in P18, and that's Travis Trussell rounding at your field. I'm surprised I got that pronunciation hopefully correct on the first time by. So I think as all the drivers are lined up on the start-finish line about to start their formation lap, I think we may pass it off to a very proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League, and that is Sim Motion. Sim Motion is not only the official sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series here on iRacing, but is a proud partner of the Formula 1600s here in the Ray Esports Racing League. Another proud partner that we have here, you can see their logo in the top left corner. Actually, that's the top right. You can tell I'm very great with direction. Is Trailbreak, a new sponsor here to Apex, just joined us a few weeks ago and is a proud partner of this series. And the world of racing telemetry is important in understanding your car and your driving. And it's why many people in the market take their butts over to Trailbreak.com. Trailbreak has been in the racing data world since about 2000. Considering that's 4 years older than me, I can vouch that's more than enough time for them to build a fantastic catalog of products. Whether you're in the world of karting, autocross, road racing, hill climbs, or track days, there's something there to help you go faster. To shop or just explore all the wonderful things they have to offer, head on over to Trailbreak.com. Trailbreak.com is a sponsor of the Formula Vs here and a proud sponsor of the Ray Esports Racing League. So you can see the drivers are making their way through the tight, twisty section of the circuit. I think this is going to catch out many drivers here. It has a little bit of a street circuit feel despite having grass shoulders and also a little bit of a grass hill. If you go off there a little bit, you might go within the bounds of the track and might go through the ground there. A little bit of a nice little feature here of the race that we have here in store. You can see the Formula Vs there lining up a little bit farther behind a split start that we have here. So the Formula Fords are going to be the first to take the green flag here in a few moments time. So we're following the Formula Vs now. I think we'll catch up to the Formula Fords here in a few seconds time right before they grab the green. That Porsche pace car you can see a little bit farther down the road is going to make the hard right-hand turn to go down the pit lane, a fairly difficult pit lane. Thankfully, these drivers will not have to negotiate a pit stop in this race, but it's a difficult pit lane to try and enter, and that Porsche pace car has entered it now, so the field is now within the hands of your pole sitter Zachary Rivard here. Put on a pretty good show last time out at Homes. No. You can see drama already farther behind. The already drivers piling into each other, but a very broken up start as chaos happens farther behind. Hopefully the Formula Vs can get through clean, but Zachary Rivard taking the jump very early on. You can see smoke pouring from behind there. You can see a lot of drivers going off, a lot of drivers picking up damage very early on in this race. Many drivers already on the back foot, but you can see up towards the front. The Formula Vs got through fairly clean, as did some of the front runners in the Formula Fords. The field has definitely thinned out a little bit. The herd has thinned out in the Formula Fords, as you can see Zachary Rivard there running in P1, Megan Overstreet with a nice little drift coming through that corner, currently running in P2, and your current P3 runner is DJ Alessandrini there in P3, up 1 position so far. So with all that chaos, a lot of drivers have already clawed their way through the field so far, but I think with that chaos, it could lead to lap traffic coming into play a little bit earlier than we expected.
Yeah, I think you may be right. Yeah, and someone's kind of reviewing that a little bit. So that was Yangshi Lin and Stephen Blethen, who I think were nose to tail at the start of that. That looked just like somebody checked up, and the people behind were expecting it. But I think our producer Josh is working on the replay for us as we're following the action here with the Formula V's coming out to the back straight here. Down, getting ready to come to pit entry, and then making the final corner for the front straight.
Thankfully for all the drivers that were involved in those incidents, if they hit the escape button and hold it down or just go into the pit lane, they can pick up something called a fast repair, so all the damage, bing, it just disappears, and they'll be able to rejoin the track, albeit they will be losing quite a lot of time in doing so. So you can see the action in the Formula V's is very tight right now. Drafting is going to be a massive thing, especially going down that fairly long start-finish straightaway. You can see drivers skating all through the road. You can see one driver taking to the escape road. That's Andrew Love there, who's now dropping back like a rock through the running order there, currently dropping down to P14, might lose another position here, down to P15 now. So a lot of drivers getting caught out by incidents fairly early on in this race. It's something that we tended to expect with a massive field here. You can see they're going 3 wide there, about to enter turn 3. That was going to be a very audacious move if they tried to stick a 3 wide coming through there, but with these tiny, plucky little Formula V cars, they can manage to do that so well, but it's also very terrifying just sitting here in the commentary booth, just seeing these drivers go 3 wide. I can't even imagine how it is behind the wheel for some of these drivers to go for these very bold and audacious moves so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very tight section of track, trying to go 3 wide, especially with these cars that have a tendency to kind of slide a little bit. They don't necessarily have very much of, if any, downforce. So it's all mechanical grip, and early in the race with cold tires, may not be the best idea to try and take it 3 wide through a tight section of the track.
Well, there's still plenty of time for these drivers left to negotiate. We can see a driver there farther off. I believe that was Michelle Lynn, actually. Yeah, that was Michelle Lynn there. Had some kind of mistake coming through the final corner, where you can see 4 wide action here going down the start-finish straightaway. That was a Formula 4 trying to get by there, but still 4 wide with these cars at really any part of this track. That is very audacious, but they're still going 3 wide, 4 position into this corner. It's going to be very close. Josh Justice there on the inside trying to avoid any sort of contact. Had to back out that low bit. Has actually lost another position, might be losing another one here in a few moments time. Got overtaken by Brad Golden, will probably be overtaken here by Seth Spolman. Actually, no, Spolman pulls in behind there, so the quote-unquote execution there for Josh Justice gets delayed a little bit, but he's definitely on the back foot right now. Meanwhile, up towards the front, Zachary Rivard has pulled a bit of a gap. You can see 2.2 seconds separating himself and Alessandrini there. You can see the gap has increased quite a lot as Megan Overstreet now has dropped down to P3. Not sure what happened there, so you can see the other drivers are running in P2 and P3. Swap positions there. We might have to take a look at a bunch of replays. I don't even think we have time to look at replays because the racing is so action-packed at this stage of the race. I feel bad for our producer, Josh. We've joked about it throughout the season so far, but we feel bad for our producer, Josh, who has to be like a chameleon or a lizard or whatever it is, looking at 2 different things at once. So I think we may have some replays here, if I heard correctly, that I need to get my hearing checked here real quick. There's a lot of stuff that was going on there, so I think this is going to be some of the 3 wide action, if I'm not mistaken. My screen might be a little bit glitched here.
Yep, it's kind of what it's looking like. Yep, we got a Wayne Buttermore. Yeah, Buttermore just off the track is what I'm seeing. All right, here we have started the race. Ooh. Oh wow! Yeah, I think
miscommunication.
Yeah, it was. I think Yancey just got on the loud pedal a little too quick and just lost the car. Oh, okay. So my producer's telling me that he says the car behind. So anyway, somebody jumped it a little too early, and then caused that collision. And so those cars had to go to the pit as we're getting back to the live action and seeing DJ Alessandrini in P2.
Alessandrini, I think, might have been very close to getting involved in that. I think he was I think he might have been the orange car that was involved in that small little schism there. So that was very dramatic. We might get another replay just to analyze all the drama that was going on there. I was preparing to have my spiel there, so you can see him in the number 2 car there. He might have been the Clipper. Yep, there you go. I am very shocked that he escaped that incident without major damage. With these cars, which I've described as like an open wheel or spider with how far the wheels stick at there, the fact he managed to make fairly severe contact, that was not a light bump by any stretch of the imagination. The fact he managed to make that contact so very early on in this race and is running fairly good pace-wise is truly unbelievable. Speaking of truly unbelievable, you can see the action here at the front of the Formula V fight is continuing to heat up. Beans Forster now in the number 231 car is running at the front for now. I think we kind of described the Formula Vs like this in the past, but I think this race here for the Formula Vs is going to be very much a high-speed game of racing leapfrog, shall we say. What do you think, Charles? Do you think that's a fair description?
That's absolutely a fair description. These cars are very draft happy. So you get a pack like this, 4 or 5 deep, and once they get on the straightaways, the guys in P2, P3, and behind the leader get a nice big run as the leader is moving a lot of air for them, and so they get a chance to get a little overspeed and make a pass. And they just, as you said, they just kind of leapfrog themselves down the straightaway.
I gotta imagine the order that you see on screen right now between Beans Forster, Jack Murchison there, and that's Eiley there currently running in P3, and then Laurie there in P4. This order is going to be completely jumbled up, really in a lapse time, really in a few moments time right now. It's so important to get a good exit coming out of that final corner. It's probably the most important corner on this entire racetrack, one of the most important corners that we'll visit so far this season, just because what it means if you have a bad exit coming out there, you're going to be a sitting duck going down the start-finish straightaway right now. But you can see there, that's Eiley going for the move to take the lead there. They're going to be side by side coming into this corner. Ooh, very close to contact between Eiley and Forster there. Fairly, very, very close there. You can see you can basically cover all 5 of these cars with a blanket. They're so tight right now. Might be seeing a little bit of 3-wide action here heading into turn 3. They're swarming like a pack of bees right now up towards the front of this Formula V fight, but Trip Eiley there manages to grab the lead of the Formula V fight for now. Again, I think this order will definitely not be the same. I mean, we're not even at the halfway mark of this race. We're only 8 minutes into this 20-minute affair here with the Formula class. So the fact that we've seen so much action so far is truly unbelievable. It's fantastic stuff, don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not complaining. But it's a little bit hard to keep track of. What do you think?
Absolutely. No, I thought I was just kind of looking at that exit of turn 1. Murchison got a great run on the outside, was able to carry speed and pick up a position over Laurie going down that straightaway before we got into to turn 3 there.
You can see that was a nice little grandstand shot, shall we call it, of the Formula V fight, but you can see there the very bright orange car there of DJ Alessandrini there. He has gotten involved in this fight, so now the lap traffic issue that we brought up at the start of this broadcast has now gone involved, and you can see there that Megan Overstreet, I think she'll be able to catch up to them going into the breaks here. This will throw a big wrench in the works of that Formula V fight. You can see as these Formula Fords get involved, we're riding on board with Megan Overstreet now. She's going to have to be extremely close, basically walking on eggshells to try not to have any contact with any of these drivers. Thankfully, the good sportsmen they are, they're getting out of the way and allowing that Formula Ford fight to happen. That Formula Ford fight right now is between, I believe, Skip Rock Jr. and Megan Overstreet there. You can see them fairly close right now, basically bumper to bumper, except these cars don't have bumpers, so it's nose cone to gearbox, shall we say, between these two cars right now. Going through the midsection of the track, these drivers running on the ragged edge of grip right now. Megan Overstreet really in a fight for her life right now to stay in that podium position. I'll take a look at my live timing screen right now, and we'll get some more information as these drivers cross the start-finish line next time by. But in terms of last time by, Skip Rock Jr. was very much quicker than Megan Overstreet, said a 1 minute 16.35 versus Megan Overstreet, a 1:17.1 there. So it's very, very split in terms of lap times between the two of them. So I think Skip Rock Jr. might be sizing up a move on Megan Overstreet here in a few few moments' time. But you can see now another driver to get involved in that Formula Ford fight was Jim Brewster. He managed to get ahead of those front Formula Vs. But we've got so much to keep our eyes on between now and the checkered flag. What do you think we should keep our eyes on, Charles?
Yeah, it's still going to be that lap traffic, I think, as these Formula 4s come back around again. I don't think they're done with them. If we hit them already at the 10-minute mark, we may encounter that again, especially as the Formula V field starts spreading out a little more. But I thought both Overstreet and Brock did a really good job of allowing the Formula Vs to take the apex and then working across into the outside on the exit to allow themselves to make that move. It was a great job of just multi-class racing by both Overstreet and Brock.
That was beautiful and very respectful what we saw them trying to negotiate the lap traffic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was very respectful, very clean, and just it shows that both those drivers have been working the multi-class aspect of it. So they were very smart about knowing where the Formula Vs are going to go and where they can go in opposition to them.
One great thing about this series that I always appreciate whenever you have tight-knit communities like the Ray Esports community with all the drivers that you see on track now, as Stephen Blethen threads the needle there trying to get the move done going into the final corner to negotiate that lap traffic. But all these drivers race against each other on pretty much a week-to-week basis. This series started back in December. It was December 19th, the first broadcast of the season. Had a small little break there for the holidays, but we're basically running from the second to last week of December all the way through to the end of February. So all these drivers, just ones that are joining this series brand new this season, will be very familiar with the drivers that they're running against. Never mind the fact that all these drivers have been running against each other for quite some time. So all these drivers know each other's competitors. They know their competitors' quirks and features when it comes to how they race on track, whether they're more aggressive drivers, whether they're a bit more conservative, whether they try and push their cars, or there's just so many things that come into it. And really, with these cars which are relying so much on mechanical grip, that mental mindset that these drivers have to try and push those cars to those absolute limits without making a mistake, the mind games play a massive role when it comes to these races. So the fact that all these drivers are so familiar with each other will play a massive role in terms of how these races turn out, whether it be here in the Formula class, whether it be in the MX-5s that we're seeing later on tonight, or whether it be in the Spec Racer Fords that we'll be seeing in 1 week's time when the series rocks up again to Watkins Glen. So it's a nice little feature of this series.
Yeah, absolutely. These you're absolutely right. We've got drivers here that see each other not maybe on these Tuesday nights, but on the Sundays as well. And so it was very nice to I've always kind of listened to the drivers in the sim. I always keep the driver channel open so I can kind of hear the talk back and forth. And we kind of compared it to, we were talking about before the broadcast how, you can just listen to the driver chat and know if you're in a road race or if you're in like a NASCAR oval race. The chatter is always different. These drivers are always respectful on the comms. Even if there's an issue on track, they settle that amongst themselves later. We don't hear a lot of crosstalk and bad things on comms. So like you said, it's a very tight knit community, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy broadcasting these races.
Yeah, it's just it's great. I mean, iRacing as a whole is based on community. The SCCA as a whole, whether it be in the world of autocross, track days, road racing, or even rallycross for that matter, is all built on having a nice little community of racers that all share the same hobby. So that is definitely one of the nice little hallmarks of the series.
Saw a spin there as we just cut away from it. Wozencroft, yeah.
I think we're missing a little bit of drama here, and we're going to replay here to see what in the world happened. We're following Spolman here, who's dropped out of the fight in the Formula Vs. We're following him heading into turn one, and you can see a little bit of contact there from Greg there in That, yeah, a fairly easy mistake to make, I think. I can't even call it a mistake, just a small little racing incident there. All those drivers trying to push very hard under braking, but a lot of drivers having different braking techniques in those cars, so very unfortunate incident there. And I think this is the incident that you're mentioning here with Wozencroft heading into the final corner right behind Wayne Buttermore, and Tokyo Drift going horribly wrong there, heading around the final corner, and sadly for him, he gets taken out of that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just, he was out too far out from the apex, couldn't get the car turned, tried to correct it with a little oversteering, and just lost the rear of the car.
Yeah, that's a shame. A lot of drivers getting bid out by the very tricky nature of this track. It's something that we were expecting, but it's definitely been turned up here quite a lot in this race thus far. One driver that hasn't been bitten by it in the slightest so far is Zachary Rivard. We're riding on board with him, going through the tight, twisty middle section of this track in car number 27 here. He has been basically flawless. Knowing my luck, I probably just pulled off the most unfortunate commentator jinx in the world. He is catching up to lap traffic here, but I don't think that will derail his race. He's put together fine drives thus far. We're about 16 minutes into this race, so in a few moments time, probably, I think about 5 laps to go until we're going to be taking the checkered flag here. I think a little bit less than that, actually. So Zach Rivard, really, if he doesn't make some kind of mistake, he's going to be within a real good shot of winning this race here in the Formula class right now. 4-second gap between himself and Ellis Andrini there in P2. So fairly spread out right now in the Formula Vs. Our attention is on the Formula Fords are spread out. The Formula Vs are not. You can see this pack here at the front of the Formula V fight. You can see there Josh Justice trying to get a move done there on Schilling after Schilling ran a little bit wide coming through the first corner. A little bit of an overshoot for him that unfortunately ended in him losing 1 spot, maybe 2 here. Ooh, you can see a Formula Ford there getting involved in that fight. I believe that was Rivard there pulling through and negotiating them fairly smoothly. So I think this Formula V fight is really going to be interesting. We have 2 fights right now between Beans Forster and Murchison right now. It's about 2/10, and that's a little bit of a gap between Stevie Ray running in P3, then even farther gap between Stevie Ray in P3 and then Josh Justice, who's currently running in P4 at the front end of this fight. So we've got a lot of different action that we have to keep our eyes on between now and the end of this race. I think this is going to be the fight to look out for here at the front of the Formula Vs. It's going to be really heated stuff between these two, which are 2 drivers that are fairly evenly matched pace-wise.
It definitely looks that way, doesn't it? I mean, you're basically, as you can see the inside of the car now as they're almost blended together. That's just about as close as you can get to another car without wrecking them. So it was a great job. Obviously, Murchison's just, I think he's kind of laying in wait. I don't think he's just ready to make a move yet. He's probably going to wait for the last lap to try and make that pass to keep him from getting paid back on the next lap. So he'll probably wait as late as he absolutely thinks he can before he tries to make a move to take the lead.
It's definitely going to be like a game of poker, but at about 100 miles an hour between these two. The strategy is going to play a massive role in how this race ends up. I think you could really boil it down to entering the last corner, as we see this might get a little bit hairy here. That might split these two. Actually, no. Ellis Andrini pulls off the safe maneuver there. Doesn't try and force the wheel down the inside of the both of them there. I think he will dispatch them at the next flat-out section of the track. So I don't think he'll get involved in this fight too much. But talking about the Formula V fight, really you could boil it down of where do you want to be entering the final corner on the final lap of the race. Because if you're running in second and have that slipstream going down pretty much well over half the start-finish straightaway, if you have that draft and have a great exit coming out of the final corner, you're going to set yourself up beautifully here. So I think right now Murchison actually is going to maybe go for the move here going into turn 1.
Definitely looks that way as he's making the move down the front straight. He had a great run out of that final corner. Was able to carry his speed, got the overspeed down the straightaway, and he's going to defend on the inside here and try and hold that spot. Not quite able to complete it, and almost a little
Skip Rock Jr. there.
Yep. Skip got in a fight that he really didn't want to be in there, as these guys are going to fight, and I think that actually allowed Beans to come back. Yep, absolutely. So they're side by side again.
Yeah, this is going to be really close stuff between these two. Beans Forster slots in behind for now. I think we'll definitely see these two battle now. You can see Beans Forster trying to go for a move around the outside. That's going to be a very bold move, but it's going to turn into the inside at the very next corner. So I think Beans Forster might be in the good position here to get that position, and he does for now. I think, did we take the white flag this time by? I think actually, no, that was a white flag last time by. The race is over. So it was very marginal there about whether we were going to take the white flag this time by or the checker, but you can see there's Zach Rivard going for the jump. It's a no clip through the map and disappeared into the ether, but you can see at the front of the Formula V fight now, they're still going side by side, going through the final corner. Beans Forster is going to be stuck on the outside. He's going to have more of a speed advantage, but he's going to be beached on that outside curve, but he's still going to pull ahead. It's going to be a photo finish between these two, but it's going to be Beans Forster taking the win side by side with his competitor there at the finish of that race. That was just about as close as you could possibly get, but you can see a little bit of closer here. That was incredibly close. Josh Justice there finishes in P4. I think that was just barely over his competitors there. That was textbook beautiful racing there. So I think we may have to look at a replay of that very close finish, because that was awesome to watch.
I'm looking at the timing and scoring now, and it looks like they were Justice and Brad Gould were a dead heat. With Schilling 700ths back, and that's down to 100th of a second.
Oh my lord, I'm taking a look now, and you cannot get any closer at all than that. That is beautiful stuff, and this is the fight while we were focusing on the Formula V win. This was a battle outside the podium here. We're following, coming through the middle section of the track. Brad Gould here gets the move done to move into P5 there. You can see Josh Justice at the front of this train. So Brad Gould right now, he really has to focus on having a great run through these corners, not making any sort of mistake, and focusing on having a great exit at that final corner like we outlined a few moments ago. So we're going to see all these drivers negotiate the final two corners of this lap. Josh Justice, ooh, you can see Brad Gould, ooh, it looked like, ooh, I think there might be a little bit of bump drifting there. I think I saw the rear end of that Formula V pick up into the air there, a little bit of contact between those two corners, but you can see these drivers were just feet away from each other. You could boil it down to inches, but you can see here Brad Gould focused on having a great exit coming out of the final corner, and the line is coming up now. Oh my god, that I can't even tell. I think that might have been Justice just barely. That might have been about an inch and a half. That was, oh my god,
it was incredibly close. If it did give Justice P4 with Gould P5. I'm sorry, but yeah, 0.000 difference, or at least down to the 100th. So I'm sure we get we won't get that. So I'm sorry. Continue, Ron. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so we won't get any replays of the finish. Well, we won't get any more replays of the finish, but we will get the results here from the Formula race, and you can see Zach Rivard, who we will be speaking to in a few moments' time. He wins fairly convincingly over DJ Alessandrini, who I think might have had some sort of damage after that little bit of a schmozzle he had at the start of this race. And Megan Overstreet rounds off the podium in third, holding off the challenge from Skip Rock Jr. Fell back after I said that he was going to be in a good shot of grabbing that P3. He finishes in P4. That's Jim Brewster having a somewhat quiet race there in P5. That's Raymond Blethen in P6. Wayne Buttermore in P7. Andrew Wozencroft in P8. Russ Lundberg in 9th, and then Stephen Blethen finishing a lap down. I believe he was the last of the Formula Fords in this race, and Beans Forster taking the win. In the Formula V's, Jack Murchison finishes just behind in P2. That's Stevie Ray taking a fairly lonely podium, you can say, in third in class, 13th overall. He was fairly much in a race of his own. Then Josh Justice and Brad Gould, it doesn't show because it says that they're both 2 laps down compared to the overall winner, but just inches separating them after 20 minutes. That was beautiful stuff between those two. They finish in P14 and P15 overall. That's Jacob Schilling finishing right behind them in class. Brandon Abbott in P17, Andrew Love in P18. Then I believe after this we're getting involved in the drivers that were involved in some kind of schmozzle. Travis Trussell there in P19. Greg Ginsburg unfortunately was involved in that incident there. I think the other go-kart parked on top of that Formula V might be the reason why he had a little bit of a trouble trying to get slowed down there into the first corner. Isley finishes in P21. Seth Spolman there finishes in P22. Mark Sherman in 23rd. Joaquin Effinger in 24th. Tom Laurie in 25th. Michelle Lynn in 26th, Trip Isley there in P27, Jamison Huffman there in P28, ends a run of him finishing up towards the front of these races. And then the last few drivers, John Wilson, Yanshi Lin, and Andrew Abbott, were all involved in incidents. So a lot of drivers having some mixed races throughout this first half of the racing action here from the Ray Esports Racing League.
Yeah, timing and scoring had the gap between Forrester and Murchison at 6/100ths of a second. Justice, Gould, and Schilling all crossed the line. As we said, a dead heat to the 100th between Justice and Gould, and then Schilling was 700ths behind them. So that very, very tight racing.
Very, very tight stuff there in the Formula Vs, but one man that wasn't involved in a very tight race pretty much all throughout this race was Zachary Rivard, who takes the win here in the Formula 1600s. Not much of a shock considering he raced them in real life, but Zach, how was the race out there up towards the front?
It was good. It was, it was a lot like real life, to tell you the truth, with traffic. I thought it was going to be a lot bigger of a factor than it was. I think the first time through, I kind of got caught behind him a little bit, and, DJ had really good pace, so I was looking at the gap every lap, almost every turn, and he caught up a little bit the first time through traffic, and then the second time, I think he got held up a lot, so from that point, then it was sort of like, all right, I can relax, but yeah, it was a good race. It was a fast field. I have to apologize. I think I went a bit early on the start, and I don't know if that contributed to some of the mayhem at the start. So if that was my fault, I apologize to everybody. But yeah, it was a good race. Apart from that,
I think overall at the start of the race, it was a little bit of a field miscommunication. But you mentioned there at the start how you were mentioning how you kind of compared your experience here in the sim to how it was in real life. So you can kind of talk through the viewers how valuable of an asset iRacing is when trying to practice for a real life event.
Oh, it's huge. When I started racing, a lot of people come up through karts and all that. I never did any karting or anything. I just, my dad also drives, and he got iRacing as a way for him to practice. And, I think I was like 13 at the time. And I just ran iRacing for years until finally I got to drive the car. And the learning curve was almost nothing, especially a lot of the tracks we go to are on here. So yeah, it played a big factor, especially with, how to manage a race and, when to push, when to not. And, with traffic like this, it's huge.
Yeah, it is a very valuable asset and plays a big role when it comes to just trying to master the car, both in real life and in the sim. So will you be running in the MX-5 race we have here in a few moments' time? And if so, what do you expect from that race?
I don't know. I don't know if I can get in time. I haven't registered for it yet, but I would guess that race is going to be really, really close. A lot like the V's are. It's going to be a lot of drafting. They can sort of get their elbows out a little bit more than we can, but yeah, that'll be a good one. Everyone should tune in for that one.
Well, I think before we hold you off for any longer, I think we'll let you give you a little bit of practice time in the MX-5. Sorry for holding it here for a little bit, but fingers crossed that we see you up towards the front of the MX-5 race here in a few moments' time. Thank you so much for joining us, Zach.
All right, thanks, guys.
That was Zach Rivard, your winner of the Formula Fords, and I see that we have Stevie Wright in the interview waiting room, but I think I'm going to let Stevie have a little bit of practice and allow us to go to a commercial break here in a few moments' time in between these races. But I think we'll round off this first half of the broadcast by just asking you, Charles, just thoughts after that very hectic, very dramatic, and very exciting race. What do you think of that?
Absolutely exactly what I was expecting. Like I said, I think the Formula Ford field did a really good job. As Zach said, a lot of patience. Seemed like all the drivers were really patient as they were working through traffic. And obviously Zach just was the class of the field tonight in the Formula Fords. And Formula Vs, wow, nose to tail, basically from start to finish. Had two finishing positions, basically were just dead heats. And so yeah, that's exactly what you come to expect when you get to a Formula V race. It's always going to be tight racing, but as we said, always clean racing with this group of drivers.
It was dramatic, exciting, beautiful to watch here in the commentary booth, and hopefully beautiful to watch here on Apex Racing TV. So the racing action is not done here from this broadcast. In a few moments' time, we'll be joining you once again here from the virtual version of Summit Point, but this time with the MX-5s. We'll be right back after these messages.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. As we said, we're back here at the virtual version of Summit Point Raceway, and we're here with the MX-5s. As you can hear the nice little MX-5 motors buzzing around the track. We have a whole lot of cars here in this class, so I think as awesome as the Formula race was, I think the MX-5s may be a little bit of a contender. Last time that we saw these MX-5s was 2 weeks ago at Homestead, running on the other road oval course there, and that was a fantastic race. We had a nice photo finish there, and I think this track, I mean, these cars always race beautifully, whether it be at a short track with a lot of twists and turns, or whether it be at a long track with a whole lot of long straightaways for these drivers to slipstream past each other. These cars always put on a heck of a show. So I think you can't really compare the tracks at all, because Homestead, the road course, is so much different than Summit Point, but I think the racing is still going to be good. So Charles, I'll pass this off to you. How different do you think these two races are going to be between Homestead and here at Summit Point?
Well, I mean, it's about as different as you can get. Homestead was a very open, flowy track, even in the infield. Then you have just, basically you're running 2/3 of the oval NASCAR circuit. So lots and lots of drafting down that huge straightaway through the corners, which is basically just flat out. So here it's going to be, wheel to wheel, lots of car bumping, lots of dents, but it'll be very competitive. Obviously, it's going to be tighter, and you're going to have to be a little more cautious on your moves in certain parts of the track. But it's still going to be a battle. It's just going to be a close quarters battle, as opposed to an artillery battle that we might have seen at Homestead.
Some may call it a battle, others may call it a war right now. Ooh, that was very close there, nearly a massive accident there. Here, coming through turn 3, a very challenging corner, whether it be in the Formulas or whether it be here in the MX-5s. Might be a little bit challenging trying to drive those MX-5 Cup cars there on the grass. I don't think those drivers are going to try and make a habit of that here in this upcoming 20-minute race, but as you said, incredibly close right now. You can see that Lewis Lockshine is at the front of this qualifying session now with about a minute left to spare. He's at a 1-minute 20.287 there, so a little bit, I mean, it's less than a tenth of a second between himself and Yanqi Lin there in P2, so very close field, and I will say very diverse field as well. Yanqi Lin racing out of China. You can see we're following Andrew Wozencroft racing from California. We've got plenty of drivers all across the country. We've got Yanqi Lin running with the Chinese flag, so we have a bunch of drivers from all different walks of life, and that's one of the nice little unique flares about iRacing. You have just a whole bunch of drivers, regardless of where they're from in the world, racing against each other and uniting to love driving and love racing against each other, and it is beautiful to see with iRacing. And we'll touch on some other iRacing stuff that will be coming up here on Apex Racing TV in a few moments time, probably after this race is done, because I think we're in for a very hectic and very interesting race. But we've had some interesting races so far this season, and I think we'll bring up now, as a qualifying session is about to wrap up here in a few moments time, we'll bring up the championship standings in the MX-5 category right now, because it's been fairly up and down with these drivers. They haven't raced too much here in the MX-5s. I believe there's a third race for them this season, but it's still been a great season thus far for Jamison Huffman right now. 49 points there is his total right now, about 6 ahead of Josh Justice there in P2, Megan Overstreet running in P3. A little bit farther behind of the two of them, that's Bradford Gold there in P4, John Wilson in P5, Stephen Blethen in P6, Miles Brown, Seth Spolman, Salen Rowland, and then Lewis Lockshine rounding out your field. Lockshine now running at the other front of the order right now in qualifying. He will look to try and stake his claim here on moving up in the other point standings right now. We'll see what kind of race he has here in a few moments time. So you can see as the other flagman valiantly waves that checkered flag, the qualifying session is officially over. So we might see an attempt at a jump here, or okay, we're gonna see them pull off. I was curious if we're going to see some drivers taking the jump here, because it's a little bit of a nice little flare with this track. You've got those grassy hills, and you can just hit them going what feels like a million miles an hour, or just park them on the hill like Mark Sherman has coming through. I believe that is turn 1 or turn 2 there. He just parked it on the inside. So qualifying has wrapped up. It's looking very good for Lewis Lockshine.
Yeah, we talked a lot in the first race, all the pro drivers coming in and running this. I want to mention Yang Shilin just very quickly. As far as the sim racing side, he was in the iRacing SCCA runoffs last year. I believe ran 4 different classes, and I think won 3 of them. So very, very accomplished SCCA sim racer. So it's always good to have Yang Xian on the grid.
Speaking of the SCCA, you can see on the top left corner right now, we have the Inside the SCCA podcast as one of the proud partners here of the Ray Esports series. So they are, as I said, one of the proud partners, and I'll just read that out real quick before we get into the starting grid here in a few moments' time. So the Inside the SCCA podcast features all things SCCA, from road racing to Autocross and Track Night in America, featuring interviews from members all across the different gambits of the SCCA. It's a podcast for all members of the SCCA to really sink their teeth in and enjoy the Inside the SCCA podcast. Is part of the RacingWire Podcast Network and is available on all major podcast platforms. New episodes drop every Friday, so you can listen to them on your way to the track. So we thank them for their support of the Ray Esports Racing League and one of the other supporters that we'll get here in a few moments' time, Grassroots Motorsports. But I think before then, we'll get into the starting grid. Can you do this, Charles, while I take a glass of water?
Absolutely. So on the pole, Louis Lockshine, Yang Shilin starting in P2. Let's hope his start this race was better than the one in the last one. So Benjamin Forster Beans in P3, Remy Lesperance P4, row 3 is Jamison Huffman and Murphy Nichols. Row 3. Row 4 is Skip Brock and Jack Murchison. Rick Wishon and Megan Overstreet round out the top 10. In 11th, Andrew Wozencroft and Tom Laurie in 12th. John Wilson and Dave Ogburn, 13th and 14th. Brad Gould and Josh Justice on row 8. Stephen Blethen and Greg Ginsburg, row 9. Mark Sherman, Trenton Kramer, row 10. Joe Camilleri and Raymond Blethen, row 11. Joaquin Effinger and Rich Green, row 12. And Wayne Buttermore and Travis Trussell rounds out our 26 drivers.
Packed field right now. You can see Trussell there, a little bit of a not very representative qualifying time there, 15 seconds farther behind. So fairly close field, you have to say that between P1 and P25 is about 4.5 seconds. So incredibly close. And with these MX-5s, it's always great to have some great racing, but it's always great to have a great sponsor as well. And for these MX-5s, it is Grassroots Motorsports. Now, built for true sports car enthusiasts, Grassroots Motorsports has just one mission in mind: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it be online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print, or at the track, the racers, mechanics, and car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports will take you behind the scenes of the racing world and teach you how to improve your car. Grassroots Motorsports has a taste of everything that you may want out of this hobby that we all love. Whether you want to hear stories about a 1,000 horsepower track monster or just a nice cool street cruiser built in someone's driveway, they've got you covered. Grassroots also has a collection of staff-maintained project cars and a catalog of articles breaking down the ins and outs of cars written in the garage with greasy hands rather than typed from behind a desk in a prim and proper office. If you'd like to read, learn, and be a part of the story, head on over to grassrootsmotorsports.com. Grassroots Motorsports is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League, and I always remember seeing the Grassroots Motorsports little tent that they always had set up at the Solo Nationals here. Well, not here. Here we have the MX-5s running in the Ray Esports Racing League here in iRacing, but out there where I saw the Grassroots Motorsports tent, that was at Lincoln, Nebraska for the Solo Nationals. So I think before we get to the start of this race, Charles, quick thoughts on what we can see. One word to describe the race that we may see in a few moments' time.
One word. Tight is the word.
Tight.
I think it's going to be tight racing from start to finish. So yeah, it's going to be, just can't wait till we get this game going and get these cars around. Obviously, lap one's going to be critical. You got to be very careful as the tires build up temp. So they'll be hopefully very cautious at the start of this race, and we'll have a good race from start to finish.
It's going to be tight in this race. All these drivers packed together like a sweater that was shrunk in the wash. So you can see they're packed together, about to get the green flag here in a few moments' time. The field is in the hands of your front row starters. Hopefully we have a much cleaner start this time by. We're riding on board with your pole sitter right now. The drivers are now on their way. The green flag is out. You can see it flying there from the flagman there. It's a fairly big jump there from the driver running in P1, the number 1, 2, 4 driver there of Louis Lockshine. Had fairly good start. You can see drama already farther in the back there. A little bit of drama. Hopefully everyone can get through there cleanly. It was a little bit farther in the back, but I think I saw a lot of bumpers flying, a lot of drivers going off the road. So yeah, another dramatic start in this race, which at a track that has a very narrow front straightaway. It's not the most shocking development in the world to see these drivers bump into each other, but 2 races in a row, and we already have drama very early on.
Yeah, Blevin, and it looks like Camilleri's already towed to the pits. Blevin's missing a large part of the front of his car. That was a great jump by Lesperance. He just basically caught Yang Qilin napping and was jumped up to P2.
I think everyone really caught Yanqi Lin napping. He's now dropped down to P5, -3 positions so far, which even with the drivers that had incidents farther in the back is still pretty bad all round. So I think we have some replays of the drama that was ensuing farther behind. So I was more focused on the massive jump there from Lewis Lockshine that I didn't even see the carnage happen farther behind. So I think this is 3 wide going horribly wrong here right at the start of the race. And that was a fairly unnecessary accident, if I'm being brutally honest there. I'm not sure who was the instigator there in the middle, but that was just not very necessary to have something like that. These drivers taking unnecessary risks, shall we say. I was going to mention how they got to keep it clean at the start just because there's so much longer between now and the end of the race, but drivers already pushing it a little bit and bumping into each other in dramatic fashion.
Yeah, so on the incident itself, and almost the way the cars went inward, it almost looks like that was maybe some netcode. So that's iRacing's accident prediction system that maybe went awry there because it didn't look natural to me. Kind of agree with you. It just didn't look like a normal type of incident. And I want to say that Les Brett's got too good of a jump because he's already had to come into the pits. So I don't think he had damage. I think he may have been black flagged for jumping the start of that race.
I think that may be a somewhat good thing from my perspective, just because before we start up the second half of the broadcast here on Apex, I was looking at his name and just dreading having to pronounce it during this broadcast in fear of absolutely ruining it. So I think definitely not a good thing for him to have a penalty so very early on in this race, dropping back. But with all the drivers having incidents so very early on, the lap traffic will play a bit of a role. And with these cars being much bigger than the formulas, I think the lap traffic is definitely going to be a lot harder to negotiate. But you can see right now you've got Beans Forrester trying to negotiate a pass here for the lead there. I think Lewis Lockshine might get hung out to dry here. He's going to be stuck on the outside. Beans Forrester on the inside. It's going to be a battle of the last late breakers heading into turn 1. And Beans Forrester, a little bit of contact there front to rear, but he managed to push ahead there. But you can see farther up the road, there's a driver that's running a little bit slowly. So I think that might throw a big wrench in the works of this front pack of the MX-5s, which you can see just so... I mean, how many cars is that in one shot? That's about 15 as we see Beans Forrester doing a little bit of rally action there coming through turn 3. I think that might have slowed him up a little bit there, so he might fall into the crutches here of Nichols here in a few moments time. But right now we're riding on board with Calamari here coming through the tight twisty section in the middle section of this track, and that gap between himself and leader Beans Forrester is decreasing quite a lot. Ooh, a little bit of contact. I think Beans Forrester had to check up massively there to avoid any sort of incident, but you can see he's acting like a pick for a lot of these cars, and it definitely hurt Beans Forrester there. He had to check up quite a lot, and I think he's going to be a sitting duck going down the start-finish straightaway this time by.
Yeah, he did have to check up, but I think Camilleri was one of the cars that was involved at the start of the race, and I think he really tried to just stay off the line and stay out of the way, but, you know, it's just a tight section of track. It's just really hard without, you know, basically sacrificing yourself and going off track to kind of move over, but I think he did as good a job as he could given the circumstances.
That was an absolutely awesome shot from our producer Josh going down the start finish straightaway, but you can see Jamison Huffman getting the lead there from Beans Forrester for now. I think Beans Forrester is going to try and re-grab that going down the inside here of turn 3. There's a tight corner, single file, but they're still trying to go side by side through it, and Beans Forrester is going to retake that position, try and stay out of the gravel and try not to slow himself up too badly there, heading through that corner. But that was nice argy-bargy action between the two of them there at the early stage of this lap. We're on lap 4 of this race. about 4 coming up to 5 minutes in to this race. So already a quarter of the distance here in this race, and it's already been action-packed from start to finish. But getting back to the point that I was going to mention, we might get another shot similar to it going down the start-finish straightaway this time by. But that shot that our producer Josh pulled of all the cars going down the start-finish straightaway was ridiculous. That was about 14 cars running essentially nose to tail, 14 cars split by about 4.5 seconds. For the people watching this at the SCCA National Conference, are you not entertained? This is absolutely beautiful stuff right now, but I think that train has actually derailed a little bit. You can see the gaps have actually increased between P3 Nicholas and Lockshine there a little bit farther behind. You can see the gap is about 2 seconds between the two of them. The gap between the front two runners right now is nothing, as Jameson Huffman is trying to get the position once again, trying to do it with a little bit more authority this time heading into turn 1, and I think he'll be able to do it with a lot more vengeance than he did last time by. Meanwhile, farther behind, Lewis Lockshine has lost a position to Yanshi Lin. I think all these drivers running between, from pretty much P4 back, all these drivers really have to work hard and try and work as a team just to catch up to this fight, because it's a fairly large gap. They're at risk of falling out of the slipstream, so I think that's going to be a thing that all those drivers have to keep in mind, just trying to stay with this front three fight, because with how hard these three are battling, if they crash into each other, they're going to be there to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely, yeah. So they're working hard to try and stay in line and make that gap up. And I think what they're hoping for is we see another car. I think that's Les Brent's up there. It's about to go a lap down. So depending on where the leaders catch him, that may check those guys up just a little bit more. They'll allow that group that starts at P4 to make up more of that gap, as the gap's already down to 1.6 seconds. So Lynn, I think, obviously out front's got some good pace, and he's going to try and drag the rest of those guys forward.
Yanshi Lin, I think, is the man on a mission. We're going to take a look at the lap times this time by after this battling continues here between Beans Forrester and Jameson Huffman here heading into turn 1. Both of these drivers, ooh, you can see, I thought that Nichols was going to try and go for a move there heading into turn 1, but you can see all these drivers, you can see Yanshi Lin's already set the fastest lap of the race so far, so he is definitely a man on a mission in P4, as is Jameson Huffman trying to reclaim that front position going into turn 3. They're going to go side by side in there. That's not a corner you expect to see some side by side stuff at, but that's very respectful racing to see those drivers try and race as hard as they have been. But you can see Jameson Huffman getting hung out to dry a little bit as he's now dropped down to P3. But with all of that battling, you can see the gap between P3 and Yanshi Lin and P4 has cratered. That gap is non-existent now. So that teamwork that we were thinking was going to make the dream work for the drivers running from P4 and farther behind has worked now. That gap has drawn shut. This is going to be a really big heads-up fight between now and the checkered flag, and it's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you get fighting side by side, it just slows both cars down, and that gives everybody behind a chance to catch up. And that's exactly what happened as they battled through turn 3 and 4 side by side. And you saw Huffman and Nichols and everybody just trying to fight for positions, and that just allowed that entire group now is added Lynn and Lockshine back up to that front. Still a little bit of a gap back there to Skip Rock, who just made a pass over Jack Murchison. Megan Overstreet, Trent Kramer, and Rick Wishon, and then several others. So the more they battle up front, the more cars are going to get involved at the front of this field, and it's just going to make for some massive racing in the last half of this race.
Well, that was a very nice drift there from Beans Forrester heading through turn 3, was flirting very much so with the gravel trap there on the outside of that corner. But you can see now Jameson Huffman trying to flirt with the lead. Here comes Jameson, and there he goes trying to get the position, but it's not over yet. There you can see Nichols trying to fight back down the inside of the next corner. It's a beautiful section of this track for these drivers to battle and have a very nice change of, okay, I'm in the good position here, but in the next corner I'm going to be in a really bad position, and we just saw that play out beautifully there going through the tight middle section of the track. But you can see 3 cars farther up the road, a little bit slower. It's going to throw a big wrench in the works of this fight. You can see now Yanshi Lin pulling a little bit between himself and Lewis Lockshine. So I think we might see the front 4 break out into a little bit of a peloton here in a few moments time, but I think when they catch up to lap traffic, farther up the road. I think they might break up that peloton again. That was very close. I think that could have ended an absolute disaster between Beans Forster and Yanchi Lin, who's trying to, Beans Forster trying to go for the move around the outside, 3 wide heading into turn 1. A lot of contact there. Jameson Huffman doing a little bit of rally action there on the outside. And with all of that, Yanchi Lin just swooped in and moved into P2. That was some textbook stuff from him there. Just kept his nose clean, tried to just focus on his own race and just let those two battle as hard as they could, force each other off the track, and Yanchi Lin swooped in there to move into P2. Nichols right now currently running in P1 is up 5 spots from where he started, so a lot of drivers cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter right now, so a lot of drivers making their way up through the field in very good fashion, very spectacular fashion, but you can see a car farther off the road. That was a little bit of a very dedicated back marker there trying to get out of the way and serve that blue flag. Be careful on the rejoin there. Okay, I think there's no incident there with that car trying to rejoin the road after their quick excursion through the grass. But with all that action that happened farther towards the front, you can see now Skip Rock Jr. involved in the fight. We're following him very close. He's a camera car with this fight that we're following now between the number 124 of Lewis Lockshine and Yanchi Lin, who's now dropped back. So you can see the topsy-turvy nature of this race. We described the Formula Vs as being a glorified 100-mile-an-hour game of leapfrog. I think the Formula Vs were definitely that case. I think the MX-5s might be even more of a high-speed game of leapfrog, because this has been just action from start to finish. This turn 1, we have seen probably 100 overtakes in this corner so far. It has been great stuff. We're just a little bit north of the halfway mark, and we've already seen action that you'd see in like 5 races put together from other series. It's been great stuff so far.
Absolutely, yes, it's been fantastic racing. Everybody up front is just, they're trying to get a position basically every straightaway. They're trying to get a run and get a pass made, and it's just keeping this field bunched up. I mean, we've got now, looks like 10 cars that are basically within, I don't know, 4 seconds of each other. And the longer they battle up front, the more cars can get involved. And, at the back of this field, you've got Trent Kramer, Rick Wish, and Dave Ogburn. Josh Justice is back in there somewhere. As you can see, as they're lining up and they're making this run, they're getting ready to try and set this final turn up to get that great run out to get down the straightaway and to see if they can pick up a couple more spots as we're riding along with Overstreet.
I would sing the conga song, but I'd at risk of blowing out everyone's eardrums, both our producer Josh, you, Charles, and anyone listening to this broadcast here on Apex Racing TV. I will not do that because I don't want to get myself fired here, but I will say that it is very much a conga line, but it is breaking up a little bit by the side-by-side action up towards the front. Beans Forster has now clawed his way up towards the front. Jameson Huffman has now followed him, but I think it's not over yet. You can see Nichols had a fantastic run running around the outside of turn 1 and is trying to get the move done here. Heading into 3, that's going to be close between himself and Jameson Huffman, flirting outrageously there with the gravel trap. You can see the tire marks there of those drivers just dipping a little wheel there. They can't go 4 wheels off, otherwise they will incur an incident point, which is one thing we haven't touched on this broadcast so far. In iRacing, you get incident points if you pick up, I think, 4 incident points around that for making contact with another car. You get 1 incident point for all sorts of things. You get incident points, and they rack up for incidents that you have throughout the race, whether it be going off track, losing control, hitting another car. Regardless of what it is, these drivers are picking up these incident points. If they hit 17, they will incur a penalty. So I think that will be one thing, especially when it comes to the bump drafting that some of these drivers are doing. I think that will be something that plays a little bit of a role. Fingers crossed that we don't see a penalty decide the fight up towards the front, because it's just some awesome stuff. But I think it could play a bit of a role, at least for one of these cars in this MX-5 pack.
It doesn't surprise me how many times I've called a race where you get a last-minute drive-through penalty because you've hit the incident limit with these cars. And yeah, these contacts, you can bump draft and you pick up what's called a 0x contact if you hit them properly and you don't overdo it. But then if you get into a situation where you make too much contact, you get that 4x, and they all just add up. So all these corners where you may dip a tire into the gravel is a 1x, and as you said, once you hit the limit, you got to come in and serve your penalty, and that effectively ends your battle for this round. And then you just basically try and scramble and pick up as many spots as you can before the end of the race.
Well, I think a lot of these drivers, even not having a penalty, I think they are scrambling right now. A lot of these drivers are in a dazed panic, trying to figure out exactly what position they need to be in towards the end of this race. We're at 14 minutes and 45 seconds now, so we don't have much time left between now and the checkered flag. We're probably going to be taking the white flag in probably about 3, maybe 4 laps. I'm not too sure. You can always tell I was great at math in school, but we're coming towards the end of this race now, and I don't even know what position you want to be in at the last lap, because if you're running up towards the front, coming to the white flag, you're going to be dropping back as Jameson Huffman now. You can see he might be losing a position here on Beans Forster here. He's going to be stuck on the outside. Ooh, trying to hold his own coming around the outside, but you can see Skip Rock Jr. had a little bit of a slip up there and actually checked up there. I believe that was Nichols who had to do a little bit of evasive action to avoid any sort of massive contact between the two of them, but that little schism between the two of them has broken up the fight a little bit, but I think it'll definitely be very close. That was very close to contact between Megan Overstreet and Lewis Lockshine. That was very close stuff and very respectful stuff that they managed to do that without making any sort of contact. They're still going side by side, going into the tight middle section of the track. Here comes Nichols there, going into the inside there on Megan Overstreet. A little bit of a slide there. Ooh, that was inches away from making contact with Megan Overstreet. He managed, that was a beautiful save from the driver, the number 5 of Murphy Nichols. That was beautiful.
That was a great save. Yeah, I was watching that Overstreet and Lockshine battle. Overstreet had a good run and took the inside, and I've seen Overstreet make a lot of nice crossover moves in her iRacing career, but Lockshine just put one on her that was very, very well done. And so, yeah, it's just they're still battling. And I think, I saw a couple of cars making runs coming out of this corner. P2 might be the best position to be in, but if you're going to go 3 wide, it doesn't, who knows at that point, right? As you see them coming down the front straight, 3 wide going into turn 1, they may try and make it 4. I don't think you can do 4, but they may try and make it 4 before it's all said and done.
I would not be too shocked, and I was very much shocked that there's a little bit of contact there between, I think it was Yanchi Lin and Skip Rock Jr. I think they made a little bit of argy-bargy action there coming through turn 1. But with all that being said, Yanchi Lin is now going side by side with Jameson Huffman trying to battle for the lead. We saw that going down the start-finish straightaway this past time by, and we're going to see it really multiply and spiral out of control between now and the checkered flag. We're going to see some of these drivers weaving their minds off, just trying to break that slipstream. But you can see a little bit of front-end damage on the front of both, that's Beans Forrester and Yanchi Lin. Both of those cars have some sort of front-end damage there. You can see a little bit of a bent Mazda logo and a little bit of a bent hood line, so I think that may play a little bit of a role, especially when it comes to the aerodynamics. I think neither of those drivers will want to start the final lap of this race up towards the front, because with a fairly wide gap there between the front bumper and the hood, that is not something that they want, especially when it comes to aerodynamics with these Mazdas that are so aero-sensitive. But even with that being said, they're still bump drifting out of their minds right now. That's a little bit of bump drift there that Beans Forster pulled off on Jameson Huffman, trying to go for the move once again, going down the inside here, heading into turn 1. Now we're riding on board with Skip Rock Jr., our camera car of this fight. He's now still locked in a fight there with Yanchi Lin. You saw a little bit of his front fender there as he tried to sneak a wheel down the inside. Yanchi Lin got the move done there, and he threaded the needle between Skip Rock Jr. and Jameson Huffman. He probably had about like 3 inches of separation at most between the two of those cars, but he still managed to slip through and is now running in P3. I think Yanchi Lin, as we've said earlier on in this broadcast, is probably a man on a mission, but we don't have much time left in this race with these drivers tracking about 1 minute 20 lap times. I believe they'll be taking the white flag this time by, so it's going to be 1 lap to go for these MX-5s, and I don't even know. Usually when it comes to the white flag of a race, you have a rough idea as to who's going to win it. With the Ray Esports Racing League, you have no idea, because the racing is so close and all these drivers are battling so hard that I think it's anyone's game now.
I wouldn't try and choose between these top 4 at this point. And then you still got Murchison, Overstreet, Lockshine just kind of hanging back there. But these top 4 have been battling basically since the drop of the green flag, and they're going to go one more time as we hit the last lap, and we're going to see, as you see them, as the weaving trying to break that slipstream. With Forrester taking that defensive line into turn 1. I think he's still going to be tight. Is Huffman going to get around? It's going to be really close. No, they're going to go side by side, maybe too wide for the rest of the lap. Oh, there we go. Now he's got it clear. So Huffman to the lead for at least temporarily.
These are the settling stages and the dying moments of this race. Right now, you can see Yanchi Lin and Beans Forster going side by side coming through turn 3. Yanchi Lin, I think, is a man on a mission. I think heading into this corner, unless someone has a great run exiting the last corner of this lap, this is going to be the corner to decide all of it. Jameson Huffman there running in P1, Yanchi Lin in P2, Megan Overstreet doing a little bit of rally action farther in the back. Right now, all these drivers really have to focus on having a great exit. Jameson Huffman, what he has to do is just nail his marks in these final few corners, carry as much speed as possible. Coming through the final corners of this race are going to be taking the checkered this time by. The clock has struck 0, and it will be the checkered flag this time by. You can see Yanchi Lin there not really picking up the slipstream. I think he wants to be in a little bit more cleaner air going through this final corner. Try and carry as much speed as possible. I think he's had a great run here, so it might be a photo finish here between these two. Right now, they're going side by side, about to hit. There's a start-finish line. No, they actually aren't going side by side. Jameson Huffman managed to hold him off there. I think if that start-finish if that start-finish line was about a half a mile farther up the road, that would have been very close. As we can see, Beans Forster plowing off the road, Jack Murchison, a little bit of plowing off the road action for him as well. All these drivers, after a very hard fought and very valiantly fought 20 minutes, all these drivers are very happy to reach the end of the race without too many scratches on their virtual MX-5s.
Yeah, without too many scratches. And it was a wide gap at the end of the race. It was 11 hundredths of a second between P1 and P2. I think Yanchi had the right idea. He kind of backed off so he could get a good run out of the corner. But Huffman just had a great run out of the corner, and Yanchi just couldn't make up the gap.
Yeah, that was, oh man, I was thinking that Yanchi Lin had the run. I was just seeing from that front bumper, it may have been a little bit of an optical illusion, I think, but it looked like Yanchi Lin had a great exit. It was just Jameson Huffman had a good enough exit to manage to hold him off there. So, as I mentioned, Jameson Huffman there, it was the final corner was going to be very important for a lot of these drivers, but it definitely helped them out quite a lot there, just getting a good run coming out of that final corner. We might see some donuts here, or we might see maybe an attempt at a jump or following Jameson Huffman here as he's going to be crossing the start-finish line this time by. Going a little bit slow, he's going to stop, so I think we might get treated to some donuts here from the winner here in the MX-5s. It will be very upsetting if he just exits out and calls it in the... Okay, here we go. Here's the donuts from your winner here, Jameson Huffman, taking the checkered flag here in the MX-5 race here for the Ray Esports Racing League at Summit Point. A very dramatic 2 races. I think picking between the Formula race and the MX-5s about which one was more exciting is really picking between what's your favorite of your 2 children. That is so, I mean, both races had their own little unique quirks and features, nice little flair. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit after we wrap up this race and hear from some of these drivers. But, oh, wow, I am really at a loss for words. I've been covering this series now for this whole season. Did a little bit of it last season, but this series never disappoints in the action department. And we just saw one of the best races that I've seen from this series. That was awesome.
That was a fantastic race. Yeah, you can't pick between those. The Formula V's it was a great race, very close finishes. But I mean, this was, as I said, from green to checker, it was wall to wall action up at the front of the field, and it was just amazing to watch. The number of passes we had for the lead was pretty incredible, and we had the one little incident at the beginning of the race, but other than that, it was clean as well. So always a great race.
Yeah, clean, respectful, hard racing, and just amazing to call here in the other virtual commentary booth, and hopefully amazing for everyone to watch wherever you're watching this broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, whether you're watching it at work. Well, I don't know who would be at work at 10:25 Eastern. Regardless of where you're watching this from, I hope that was a good race for you to watch as well. And I'm sure for some of these drivers that were just in that race, it was very good from their perspective behind the wheel. So we're going to bring some of these drivers in right now. I think the first driver we're going to have a chat with is your winner in the MX-5s here. It is Jameson Huffman. Jameson, first off, fantastic donuts there at the end of that race, and fantastic race from our perspective. How was it from your perspective beyond the wheel?
It was a whole lot of fun. That was so much fun from just start to finish. Just wheeling it around, just trying to put on a show, but also not take each other out in the same process. And it was a really nice balance of clean racing, but also hard racing today.
Yeah, clean, hard, respectful racing. We've probably said about 5 times already in this broadcast, but I think there's no other words to describe the action that we just saw. So we asked this from the other winner in the Formula Fords, and I'll ask you this as well. How valuable of an asset is iRacing when it comes to trying to practice for a real-life event? Because you do racing in real life with the SCCA, so really how important is iRacing when trying to practice for a real-life race?
It really depends on how close of a car you can get to your real life car. Like, I have some cars that are somewhat close, but most of them are either a few seconds faster or a few seconds slower. So it's really good for learning tracks though, and learning the general way to go around a track. So that's been really helpful, but trying to find the right car and find the right times has been a struggle, but it's still great for learning a new track.
And speaking of learning a new track, next time out is going to be at Watkins Glen, running on the boot layout, if I'm not mistaken. So how do you fancy your chances heading into the Glen?
I love Watkins Glen, and we're thinking about running it this year, and that'll be a whole lot of fun, and I can't wait to do that. But Watkins Glen does not really seem to like me, so I'll kind of be iffy going into there. So
a little bit of a love-hate relationship at that track, would you say?
Yep, especially with the bus stop.
I think. Yeah, the bus stop. There's such a razor's thin margin of error, and with the other spec racer Fords and the MX-5s that we'll be seeing there in 1 week's time, having that razor's thin margin of error will definitely hurt you when it comes to running in cars that have no really aerodynamic grip to speak of, so reliant on the mechanical grip. So fingers crossed you have a bit of a nice turn of fortune when the series turns up to Watkins Glen in 1 week's time. Thank you for joining us. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout outs?
I'd like to thank my parents for all of these opportunities, and Beans and Murphy for messing around in the voice chat during that race, and then also you guys for putting on the show.
Well, thank you very much for that. And we also thank you for the other nice little smoke show there on the other start-finish straightaway and the great racing that you're a part of there. So, Jameson, thank you so much for joining us, and fingers crossed we hear from you again at Watkins Glen.
Yep, thank you.
And that was your winner in the MX-5 category, Jameson Huffman, putting on a pretty good race. Now, Charles, who do you like to talk to?
Well, let's go ahead and go in order, and we'll talk to our P2 winner there, or second place, Yangshi Lin. And get him pulled in here. Yangshi, good morning. The very, very frantic 20-minute race there.
Yeah, it's really intense. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you kind of got jumped there at the start, but you had a really good recovery, and we're battling for the win there toward the end of the race.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know how to put it, because usually rolling starting official races, it's whenever the leader goes, the few just goes, but the league rules in this league said that we are supposedly to go on in-game green flag. So I think some people probably forgot about that.
I think Les Bronx was one of those. I think he did end up getting a penalty to black flag. So he basically came into the pits, which obviously not something you want to do. You want to play by the rules, but yeah, we really enjoyed this race. We were talking about the difference between the formulas and then this race. This race was just packed from start to finish.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, these cars, they have fenders on them, so I would say they give you a little bit more confidence to go side by side with people. You know, even if you run a little bit wider than you planned, you can just get away with it. You know, unlike those open wheelers, sometimes you run a little bit wide, the wheels tangle, and many cars will be out of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations, John Shi. Is there anybody you want to thank?
I mean, obviously, thank you all for broadcasting it, and thanks to Mr. Stevie Ray organizing the league, and thanks to Mr. Jason Cooper for my setup.
Well, there you go. Congratulations, John Shi. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah, see you again soon.
That was Yanshi Lin involved in that fantastic fight, and the other driver involved in that fight was Beans Forster. We'll drag him into the other commentary booth now. Beans, thank you so much for joining us, and very, very dramatic race. How was it from your perspective?
Oh, it's always fun. everyone kind of up in the front here, we always know everyone's limits, and we trust each other. So we get to kind of have a little extra fun, send it 3 wide at times, and make it through it alive.
Yeah, that was, I mean, just the fact that y'all managed to battle as hard as you did and get through that race with barely even a paint chip on your cars is really, really shocking. So I'll ask you this, and we've asked a whole lot of people the kind of same question along this line. So just how valuable of an asset is iRacing when it comes to trying to practice for a real-life event? So hopefully, with the stuff that you had here, you might be very much prepared for a very hard battle at whatever event you do next.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just starting to get into road racing. I've been autocrossing for on and off for about 10 years, and I'm building a spec me out in my garage right now. I'm doing comp school in July down in Sebring with I believe they have a 2-hour enduro that same weekend as well. So. I finally just got all my safety gear, so this iRacing has kind of really helped to push me to actually make that jump into the road racing side of the house from like autocross.
As an autocrosser myself, I can. There's a little bit of like a brothership there, considering we both did the autocross for so long. This is a little bit of a personal question, Beans here. How long have you been running autocross for? This is completely unrelated to the race, and I'm sorry for anyone that wants some hard-hitting journalism here at the end of this broadcast, but how long have you been running autocross for?
So it was probably, I think it was 2012 is when I got to my first duty station in the Marine Corps, and the North Carolina region of the SCCA utilizes a decommissioned part of the runway at Cherry Point in North Carolina. And so that was my first autocross. I got to my duty station, and then like within 2 weeks of being there, I saw this, and I'm like, that looks fun. And I had a 2002 WRX wagon that I wheeled out there, and one time, and I was hooked. I did it every single time that I could, every year that I could. I did a lot of traveling and stuff and deployments and whatnot, so I didn't get to do as much. As much as I really wanted to, but it's been like on and off at least every other year for about 10 years.
You just barely beat me out. I started running with the SCCA in 2013, so you edged me out just barely there. I do like the mention of there being a decommissioned airbase that you were running at, and kind of that's how I got my start here in the up here in the Philly region. We had we still run at a lot. It's the old Johnsville Naval Air Development Station, I think it was, just outside of Philly here in, it's in Warminster, to be a little bit more precise, and we used to run on a small little bit of runway that they had left. They've turned it into a community park, so there's just a tiny little bit of the runway, so it's like sub 30-second courses, but still nice that we have a little bit of like the same sort of origin story of how to get into the SCCA. So I'll ask you this real quick, and fingers crossed that we see you at Watkins Glen in 2 weeks time. Oh, not 2 weeks time, my apologies, 1 week's time. What are your thoughts entering that race? That would be pretty interesting. What do you think?
Oh, the draft is like, it's like a crapshoot with that one. It's so strong and so powerful that you can start the last lap in 6th, depending on how big that front train is, and you can end up winning by a car length. So it's gonna be fun. So we'll have to see.
I can imagine behind the wheel is going to be pretty exciting, and for us in the commentary booth, it's going to be pretty awesome as well. So, Beans, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you have another action-packed race at Watkins Glen in 1 week's time.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll see you.
And that was Beans Forrester, a driver who's really the camera car for a lot of the fights that we saw here. Very nice words from all those drivers giving their perspective there. So we gotta wrap up this broadcast. We're running a little bit overdue, but with how action-packed and jam-packed the racing was, it's a little bit expected that we're running a little bit over time. So I think I'll ask you this here, Charles, and I know we were kind of joking that's a little bit of a loaded question, but between the MX-5s and the Formulas, which do you think was best?
No, I think I'm gonna have to go with the MX-5s. I mean, the Formula was a good race, but the MX-5s, they put on a great show. It was a great battle. You know, when you're counting down the laps and you've got 3 or 4 laps left, and there are 10 cars that potentially could win the race, that's almost half the field. You got your money's worth when you pay the ticket for this one.
Yeah, money's worth indeed. That was some of the best racing that I've ever seen in my time as an iRacing commentator. And we've got plenty of other racing action coming up here, not just from this series, but everything else here on Apex Racing TV. So if you'd like to stay up to date, remember to hit the subscribe button, like this live stream if you want to, hit the notification bell, do everything. If you've used YouTube for about 5 minutes, you know roughly what to do if you want to stay up to date here on Apex Racing TV. Now, oh man, it's kind of hard to wrap things up because I just want to talk about the race for hours, but I'm running a little bit tired right now. I'm running out of energy, so I think we'll have to wrap things up here. Our thanks as always go out to SimMotion, TrailBreak.com, and Grassroots Motorsports, along with the Inside the SCCA podcast, the proud partners of this series. Without them, these broadcasts and this series would simply not be possible. Our thanks as always go out to Stevie Ray for all the hard work he does behind the scenes to make this series and these fantastic races happen. The racers on track for putting on those races, and the racers watching us here on YouTube, as well as the people at the SCCA National Conference. Hopefully we put on a good show for y'all here tonight. Next time we'll see y'all, we'll be at a virtual Watkins Glen, where the MX-5s and the Spec Racer Fords will do battle at one of the most historic road courses in America. So as for the racing action here, I think that just about does it for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler. I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again in 1 week's time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VR.